You've seen it happen before. Someone reaches for your baby. A relative, a family friend, someone smiling, someone harmless. And your baby knows, not after the handoff, not after a few seconds of adjustment. Before, in the narrowing gap between your arms and theirs, something fires inside your infant's nervous system with the precision of a switch being thrown. The body stiffens, the face changes, and then the sound. Most parents react with embarrassment. They apologize. They describe their baby as shy, or clingy, or going through a phase. But what just happened had nothing to do with shyness. What you witnessed, in the 2 seconds between that reach and that cry, was the activation of one of the most sophisticated biological security systems ever documented in developmental neuroscience. A system that spent months assembling itself inside your baby's brain, quietly, beneath the surface of every ordinary day, classifying faces, encoding voices, cataloging every presence in your infant's world. And when that unfamiliar face reached forward, the system ran its check, and it had an answer. The crying is not distress in the way you understand that word. It is an alarm, built by evolution, refined by months of neurological construction, and triggered with an accuracy that no adult security system on Earth has come close to replicating. Your baby wasn't being difficult. They were doing their job. The word most parents reach for is shyness. It is the wrong word. Shyness is a personality trait, a temperamental tendency, something that varies from child to child, present in some, absent in others. Something personal. What your baby is doing is not personal. It happens in virtually every neurotypically developing infant on Earth, across every culture, every environment, every parenting style and family structure researchers have ever studied. At approximately 6 to 9 months of age, with a consistency that developmental scientists describe as near universal, infants who previously accepted contact from unfamiliar people begin to refuse it. Suddenly, decisively, without negotiation. The clinical term is stranger anxiety, but that term undersells it considerably. What most parents don't realize is that anxiety implies something gone wrong, something dysregulated, something that, with the right approach, might be corrected or gradually eliminated. What is actually happening is none of those things. What is happening is the successful completion of one of the most complex neurological projects of the entire first year of life. A project that began in your baby's earliest weeks and reached operational readiness sometime in their second half of their first year. The system isn't misfiring, it just came online. Here's what most people never stop to ask. What actually changed inside your baby's brain between month 3 and month 7, what you're seeing in that moment, the stiffening, the cry, the alarm, is the result of two brain structures finally learning to work together. The first is the amygdala. Think of it as the brain's threat detection center. It is one of the oldest structures in the human brain, present across virtually all mammalian species, and its job is singular. It scans incoming information, it runs the check, it issues the alarm. The second is the hippocampus. Think of it as the brain's memory filing system. It records experiences, it stores the associations that allow the brain to recognize, this person has been here before, this face belongs to someone safe. Together, they form the neurological architecture of the security clearance protocol your baby's brain has been quietly building since birth. And here is what researchers at Harvard's Center on the Developing Child have documented about the first year of life. At birth, the amygdala is active, but imprecise. It responds to broad categories of stimulation, loud sounds, sudden movements, the loss of contact, but it doesn't yet have the reference library it needs to distinguish between a known face and an unknown one. The memory system, meanwhile, is in the earliest stages of building exactly that library. Every face that appears consistently in your baby's world, every voice, every scent, every movement pattern associated with comfort and safety is being quietly recorded, filed, added to a growing neurological register of known identities. This process takes months, but here's the surprising part. At approximately 6 to 9 months, a critical threshold is crossed. The memory system is sufficiently developed, the threat detection center is sufficiently calibrated, and for the first time, the two structures form the communicative pathway that allows the system to do what it was always being built to do. Run the check. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences, studying how these two structures develop together, found something striking. The ability to match an incoming face against a stored record of known identities doesn't emerge gradually across many months. It emerges in a remarkably compressed window, one that correlates precisely with the behavioral onset of stranger anxiety. The system doesn't ease into operation. It activates, and once it does, every face your baby encounters is processed through the same protocol. Known or unknown, encoded or uncleared, safe or not yet determined. What you're seeing in that moment of reaching and crying is not an emotional meltdown. It is a database query returning a result. The unfamiliar face isn't doing anything wrong. The amygdala is not assessing their smile or reading their intentions. It is running an identity check against the stored register, and if the face isn't in the system, the alarm fires. Automatically, immediately, with a speed that precedes conscious awareness entirely. That is not emotional reactivity. That is a security system operating at peak efficiency. To understand why this system exists, you have to go back further than neuroscience. You have to go back to the environment that built it. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, infants did not live in houses. They lived in small, tight-knit groups, bands of individuals whose faces were known from birth, whose voices were encoded in the earliest weeks of life, whose presence was inseparable from the experience of survival itself. Outside that group, the world was not safe. Rival groups competed for territory and resources. Predators moved at the edges of camps. An infant passed into unfamiliar arms, carried beyond the perimeter of known faces, was an infant in immediate life-threatening danger. The infants who survived were not the most trusting. They were the most discriminating. The ones whose developing nervous systems learned fastest, most precisely, most irreversibly to distinguish the faces of the inner circle from the faces of the unknown, and to broadcast, at maximum volume, the moment that distinction detected something uncleared. The cry was not a request, it was a signal, directed at the one person whose encoded presence meant safety, designed to carry across distance, designed to interrupt everything, designed to bring the primary caregiver back before the separation became something that could not be recovered. What most parents don't realize is this: your baby crying in the arms of your well-meaning relative is running a program that kept human infants alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The environment has changed completely. The program has not. And this is not a flaw in the system's design. It is the system's design. Because in the ancestral environment, the cost of missing a real threat, of failing to alarm when an unknown presence was actually dangerous, was catastrophic and irreversible. The cost of a false alarm, of crying when the unfamiliar person was actually harmless, was a few minutes of discomfort. Evolution does not optimize for your grandmother's feelings, it optimizes for survival. And on that metric, this system has performed without failure for longer than recorded history. What makes this system remarkable is not just that it exists, it is when it exists. The security clearance protocol comes online at approximately 6 to 9 months, and that timing is not arbitrary. It is precisely calibrated to a specific window in your baby's physical development, the window when movement becomes possible. In the earliest months of life, an infant cannot go anywhere, they cannot roll toward a threat or crawl away from danger, they are stationary, and a stationary infant in the ancestral environment was protected entirely by the presence of their caregivers. An alarm system in those earliest months would have been redundant, but here's what the research reveals. Somewhere around month 6, the same window when stranger anxiety activates, infants begin to move, to reach, to initiate contact with the world around them on their own terms. Researchers at the University of Washington studying the relationship between motor development and social threat detection found that these two trajectories are not coincidentally parallel. They are linked. The brain's security clearance protocol activates precisely when independent movement makes it necessary. When an infant can begin to close the distance between themselves and an unfamiliar presence, without a caregiver's intervention, the alarm comes online before the legs do. Because in a world where a crawling infant might move towards something dangerous, the most critical protection is not physical, it is neurological. It is a system that identifies the unknown before proximity becomes a problem and broadcasts the alert before contact is made. Your baby's brain did not develop stranger anxiety because something went wrong at 6 months. It developed it because everything went right. For the overwhelming majority of infants, the most acute phase of this system is temporary. As the child's world expands, as unfamiliar faces accumulate enough exposure to be recorded as known, as the stored register grows richer, the alarm becomes more selective, more calibrated, less hair trigger. Most children move through peak stranger anxiety between 6 and 12 months and emerge on the other side with a security system that is operational but no longer deafening. But occasionally the calibration doesn't complete as expected. There are two patterns worth knowing about. The first is a system that stays at peak sensitivity far beyond the expected window. A child past 18 months who cannot tolerate the presence of any unfamiliar person, whose alarm fires not just at strangers, but at any variation in their environment, may be showing early signs of anxiety or sensory processing differences. Both respond well to early support. The second pattern is the one that gets missed most often. It is the absence of the system entirely. A baby who shows no stranger anxiety at any point in the first year, who accepts contact from any unfamiliar person with complete indifference, who shows no preference between known and unknown adults, who never searches for a caregiver's face when distressed, is not simply an easygoing infant. They are an infant whose security clearance protocol may not be developing on the expected trajectory. And that absence, the missing alarm, the missing preference, the missing search for a familiar face, is one of the earliest behavioral markers that developmental pediatricians associate with atypical social bonding. Both patterns are worth raising with your pediatrician. Not because something is necessarily wrong, but because the window in which the developing brain responds most completely to support is measured in months, not years. And the parents who catch these patterns early are almost always the ones who were paying close enough attention to notice when something felt different. Trust what you notice. So go back to that moment, the relative reaching forward, the narrowing gap, the 2 seconds between contact and cry. Go back to the embarrassment you felt, the apology you offered, the explanation you constructed, she's shy, he's tired, it's just a phase. To smooth over a moment that felt somehow like a reflection on you. It wasn't. What happened in those 2 seconds was the product of months of silent, continuous work that your baby's brain performed in the background of every ordinary day. During the feedings, the naps, the quiet hours of simply being held and observed and kept safe, it was building its list, encoding your face, your voice, your particular way of moving through the space your baby inhabits. The full neurological portrait of the person whose presence means, at a level that precedes language, that precedes thought, that precedes any conscious experience of any kind, safe. And when that unfamiliar face reached forward, when the system ran its check and found no match in the database it had spent months constructing, your baby did the only thing their nervous system knew how to do. They called for you. Not with words, not with a gesture, with the only broadcast powerful enough to cut through distance and distraction and a room full of well-meaning people. They called for you. And somewhere in your body, before you processed it consciously, before you decided what to do, you heard it, because your nervous system has its own version of the same system, and it has known your baby's voice since the first moment it heard it. That is not clinginess. That is not a phase. That is 2 nervous systems, one ancient and just coming online, one fully built and instantly responsive, doing exactly what they were designed to do, finding each other, across a room full of people, in under 2 seconds. Leave a comment below and tell me about your handoff moment, the specific one, the face, the reach, the sound. Because somewhere right now, another parent is standing in that same room, holding that same apologetic expression, and they need to know that what they just witnessed was not a problem to be solved. It was a miracle of engineering. And if you want to understand why your baby reaches for your face in those quiet moments, touching your eyes, your mouth, your nose with that slow, focused intensity, like they are reading something written there, that is the next video. And what they are actually constructing in those moments, inside their own brain, using your face as the blueprint, is more extraordinary than anything you have been told.